Hi, this is Kathy. I'm your instructor for CHS 100, and we're talking about multitasking today and how to optimize your executive function. So how would you rate your ability to multitask? Do you think you're not very good at it and that you struggle to do it, or that you're really good at it and you can do multiple things at the same time and do them all well? Think about 4 activities that during a typical day when you would be multitasking. And so for me, I often work out and have something else going on at the same time. I put on a podcast, or if I go to the cinema room sometimes and watch a movie. Um, the other things I do is sometimes when I'm doing homework that doesn't require a lot of my attention, but it just requires a little bit, I turn on the TV. Or I sometimes turn on the TV to something that's completely banal and interesting, and then I can really focus on my work. So I do it frequently. And the reason why I do it, and I'm sure you have reasons why you do it as well, is that I either am bored with the activity and so I don't want to focus on it. I feel like I have something else I need to think about while I'm doing it, or because I feel like I have so much to do that I have to focus on one or the other. I can't focus on one or the other. I have to do them both at the same time. So people really love this. They love multitasking. So we don't just sit down and eat. We sit down and eat with our phones or something else to distract us. People do this even when they're with somebody else. They'll sit there. I'll see families at restaurants and the whole family has their phones out. I used to have a rule that no phones at dinner table, and that's gone by the wayside as my son has become an adult. But I do think that and sometimes when one of us forgets our phone in the car, we're like, I have to go get my phone. And you're like, is it really that bad that we just can't chat? So how many of you have laptops with multiple programs open right now? Probably most of you. And during lecture, do you sometimes open up games or maybe work on homework for another class or do activities? Now, it used to be that I could tell when students were doing this because they would have it on their laptop, and then students behind them, I'd see them looking over at their screen and then sometimes smiling because it would be something funny. Uh, I don't see that much anymore because most of you use your phones for this now. You don't use your laptops for distraction when you're in class. I do see you with your laptops and you're typing. Sometimes, most of the time I assume that you're trying to make sure you get the information you need so you can be successful in the quiz, but also sometimes you're working on things from other classes. I totally get that sometimes that you are not engaged with the material and it's not interesting to you, so you distract yourself in multitude of ways. Or maybe you feel like, oh, I have to get this done for my other class, so while I'm sitting here, I can do that. And it works sometimes to a certain extent, and we're going to talk about when it works or why it works and why at least we think it works for us. So what is multitasking? Simultaneously doing multiple things, right? Isn't that what you think? And it's not really true. It's just when you think that you're doing multiple things at the same time. So what is really happening? Multitasking is a myth. Research has shown that when people think they are multitasking, they are actually switching quickly between tasks. And sometimes can be easy. It's a quick transition from one task to the other with very little, don't even notice that there's a delay. Sometimes you may notice that it's taking you a bit to get back and engaged with the other task you're doing. So you're working on your homework, you have your favorite TV show on, and then you're also occasionally checking your notifications to see if anyone's contacted you. You got all that going on at the same time, and you think you're doing all of it at the same time. You're checking out memes. You're actually quickly switching back between all these tasks. You're not doing them at the same time. You're watching the TV show for a while, then you're doing your homework, then your phone rings and you look at that, and then somebody sends you a meme, you stop and look at that, and then you go back to your homework. So something that you could probably get done in your homework fairly quickly is now being extended because your mind keeps switching back and forth between these tasks. So here, of course, we see a person texting and driving. So what is actually happening? Remember when we talked about metacognition and the brain? Task switching is also associated with the prefrontal cortex. Task switching it's also associated with the anterior cingulate cortex, which connects to the prefrontal cortex. So we're not really multitasking. We're switching between tasks. Does it really matter? Yes, it does. So let's say that we're switching between two tasks, or we're doing each task separately. If we're switching between two tasks, it's slower and there's going to be more errors. If we're doing each task separately, it's faster and there's fewer errors. I don't know how many of you have ever felt the experience of flow. And flow is kind of the opposite. In fact, it is the opposite. Well, not exactly, maybe, but it is very different than multitasking. Flow is when you're so engaged with something that you like the whole world around you disappears and you just totally are focused in on one thing. And flow is an amazing thing. It allows you to just totally engage with information, and you come out of it and you're sure like it's like you've been like in a trance for a while. So you've been so totally engaged with something. Multitasking does not save time. So 2 is not better than 1. So researchers call the performance decline due to switching between tasks the switching cost. Every time you switch, you lose a little bit of time in getting your brain to reconnect with what you're supposed to be doing. The cost is higher as the tasks become more complex. Have you ever been doing something that was requiring you a lot of your energy, you're totally focused on it, and someone comes in and interrupts you? It might just be for a very simple question like, as I'm a parent, it could be like, do we have any milk? I was totally in my flow and I was thinking really hard about something, and then I have to stop, take a minute to think about, do we have any milk? Answer the question, and then getting back into that same space takes time. So thinking about the things that you do that when you multitask and classify them as more complex or more simple tasks. So simple tasks are things that you could do. They don't require a lot of thought process. So gardening, well, some gardening does take it, but pulling weeds. I go out and pull weeds a lot. I don't like to spray, so I'm pulling weeds a lot. And it doesn't really take a thought process. I can listen to a podcast or something while I'm doing that. On the other hand, I watch sports and try to work at the same time, especially if it's a big sports season. And the problem with that is that I'm paying attention to one or the other. Either I'm totally focused on the game and I'm not getting any work done, or I'm totally focused on work and I totally miss what's going on in the game. So learning to focus on one task, especially things that are more complex. You don't think watching a basketball game or a football game is complex, and it doesn't require, you think, oh, it doesn't require all my energy. But it's important that you don't miss important moments. The same thing of TV shows. Sometimes you're like, but what happened here? I don't know what happened. So some complex tests are driving. We don't think of it as because we think it's automatic, but it isn't. It requires lots of skills. Doing homework, carrying on a conversation, reading, writing essays, answering questions, cooking, adding new tasks. I would say with cooking, it's whether or not how familiar you are with what you're cooking. Is it something you make all the time and you could do it in your sleep, or is it something that's new and less familiar to you? And that's probably, well, any new task is also that. Simpler tasks are eating, walking, coloring, doodling, and a lot of times we do those when we're trying to stay focused on the conversation or the homework or something like that. Hopefully not the eating part, but we really should focus on our eating. Speaking and listening to others talk are very complex tasks. Does it drive you crazy when someone is texting while you're talking to them or when they are supposed to be watching a show with you? How does that make you feel? it doesn't really bother me if someone's watching a show with me, because unless it's a show that I'm trying to show them how wonderful this show is, and then they're texting. It makes me feel like they're devaluing how wonderful this show is. Uh, but for the most part, I don't mind that so much. But when I'm talking to someone, how do you feel? Person says, I'm listening. They actually have no idea what you said. And I remember years ago, I went and heard a leadership speaker, and he was talking about this, the importance of active listening. And he was talking about a situation with his wife. His wife came into the room. He was watching a football game. He was already multitasking. He was watching a football game, and he was reading the newspaper. And she came in, and she said, we need to talk about our son, Jason. And he peeked his head out and said, oh, okay. And she proceeded to tell him about her concerns about their son, Jason. And he nodded his head and a lot. And finally she says, you know what, never mind. You obviously don't care about this issue, and you've disrespected it. And she got really furious. You're not even listening to me. At which point he told her, I was listening. And he proceeded to give her a summary of what she just said. And I'm going to tell you, and those of you who don't know this, that didn't make things better. Because conversation involves more than just the words. It involves emotions and feelings and connection. And so even if you are able to remember what they said, if you are not fully engaged in the conversation, the other person doesn't feel heard. So you are not. So how did you rate your ability to multitask? So a Stanford University study found that heavy multitaskers, those who think they are good at multitasking and do it a lot, and light multitaskers, those who usually do one thing at a time. So which one do you think you are? Heavy multitaskers were worse at organizing their thoughts, ignoring irrelevant information, and had higher switching costs. I think sometimes people who are heavy multitaskers have a hard time engaging and getting into that flow state and cutting out the rest of the world and just focusing on something. And so that's why they multitask. So it might be that people who do multitasking probably already have a difficulty with organizing and focusing. But these people don't necessarily know that. They think they're doing great at it. Are any people exceptional multitaskers? There is a very small number of supertaskers, 2.5% of the population, who don't show switching costs. They can switch between tasks without having any lag. It's highly unlikely that you are one of them. Now, since we have, how many, 80 in the class, there's probably one or two of you. Multitasking is a myth. People who think they are great at multitasking are often the worst at multitasking. Multitasking does not save time. When we're doing multitasking, it's slower and we make more mistakes. This is especially true with complex tasks. So is it a problem if you listen to a podcast while you are working out? Well, probably not, because unless you really need to know the information from your podcast. You know, if this is a podcast you listen to for your own entertainment, no biggie. If this is a podcast that you're going to be tested on later, you might want to instead doodle, making notes, doing something that is not taking attention away from what you're focusing on. It is more efficient, to be more efficient, we must resist the urge to multitask, but it's not easy to resist. So here's what you're doing for your field assignment. Some of you have already started on this, is pick a time when you'll be doing homework or studying for at least an hour. During that time, you must do nothing else. Turn off your phone, put it somewhere you cannot see it, and have no other programs running on your computer. So no messaging that tells you there was an email that was received. That's one of my big pet peeves, is I should turn this off because I'm working on something and then the email thing pops up. But just you and whatever work that you need to do. So spend an hour I would choose an hour of studying a topic that is not something that comes easy for you. Don't pick something that you're just like, oh yeah, this is just common sense. I know all this. Pick something that maybe is a little more challenging to you. Math, if that's challenging to you, a chemistry class, something that's a challenging course for you. And then once you did that, what do you usually do at the same time? Do you have the TV going? Do you have music going? Do you have pop-ups? Do you have your phone notifications on? What was it like working with nothing else on? Did you work more efficiently, faster? Was it easier to think about the questions or problems in the assignment? How hard was it to do this activity? Did you find yourself starting to automatically reach for your phone or start up another program? Did you get through the entire hour without looking at anything else? In this one here, did your friends wonder where you were going, what you were doing? I don't know why your friends are watching you, but that you might want to question. What are your thoughts on this field assignment? Will you consider changing how you work? So that's, I think, going to be a great field assignment for you that you can actually spend some time and think about how you can use this. And I don't think anyone needs to say you have to completely end multitasking in your life, but to recognize that there are times when putting it all aside. One of the places my son and I go somewhere, they have these little private phone booths. You're still using your cell phone, but it's a little private spot. It's a library that has these. And I'm always like, I want to build one of those in my house so that I could get complete silence and just focus. So think about how you can incorporate this into your life as well.